It is. Okay? Yeah? I made up my job, but the truth is I discovered the power of a story as you're looking to go all in on everything that's happening here today. I was at a very young age. I told my very first story when I was 11 years old and I was in 5th grade. Now, I gotta tell you, 5th grade, not a great year for me. Okay? For a couple of reasons. Number one, I was recovering from a truly awful haircut from 4th grade. Did any of your mothers do this to you? I had this beautiful long hair, and then my mother decided that it would look really good as a pixie haircut. She said it would look nice on my bone structure, so she cut off all of my hair. It did not look good. Okay? It just led to a whole lot of ridicule from the mean 5th grade friends. That was one of the reasons. The second reason 5th grade was kind of iffy for me is I feel like, and I don't know, tell me if you think this is true. 5th grade is like that first year where you start to wonder, who am I? Right? Who am I in this world? Where do I fit? How do I make my voice be heard? And I gotta be honest, it was awkward. I was struggling. It wasn't very clear to me. And to make matters worse, I had this best friend who had it all figured out. The girl was perfect. How many of you had one of those best friends, right? Perfect. First of all, she was absolutely beautiful. She had this long hair, long being the operative word there, okay? Long hair and these big brown eyes that could like turn green when she needed them to. You'd be looking at her and all of a sudden her eyes would change colors. It was mesmerizing. And all of the girls loved her because she was kind and she was loyal, and the teachers adored her because she was smart and engaged. And the boys, which let's face it, they're the ones that mattered the most at that point, the boys. If a 5th grade boy could go to a tattoo shop and have a name tattooed across their arm, they all would have had her name, because even her name was perfect. Molly. Molly. I know. I remember walking down the wide elementary school hallway side by side with my best friend Molly. We could never go anywhere without each other. And the principal, the most powerful man in the school, would come walking towards us, and every single time he would see us and he would stop and he would do this thing with his hands on his hips. He would go like, "Hey, Molly, Molly," which, looking back, a little inappropriate, okay? But it was the early 90s, it was a different time, right? So we go, "Hey, Molly, Molly," and then he would just keep on walking. Like I wasn't even there. I remember many a night crying to my mother, wishing I could find that thing to make my voice be heard. And then it happened. It was at the very end of my 5th grade year. We were all given an assignment. We were supposed to choose a children's book and then go read it to a 3rd grade classroom. I chose the book, The Giant's Big Toe. Do any of you know it? No. Not a great American classic, okay? But I chose that book anyway. I remember taking the book and reading it and thinking, you know, this is a good story, but maybe I could do something with it. So I added some emotion to it. I added some feeling. And I remember walking into that 3rd grade classroom where I'm supposed to read my book. And it was at the very end of the school year, at the very end of the day. Do I have any teachers in the room? Yeah, a few teachers. Let's hear it for those teachers, right? And the kids, these 3rd graders, were bouncing off the walls, right? It was pure chaos, of picking bugs off each other. The teacher was sitting in the back of the room like, just please let the bus come and take these children away, all right? That's the point that we were at. And I walk in with my book about a giant's toe, and I thought, well, this isn't going to work. I can't just read this to them. So I decided to put the book down. And I just started telling the story. And within those first few sentences, I held those 3rd graders in the palm of my hand. And I'll admit, I kind of liked the power, right? I could make them do anything. I finished telling that story and a light bulb went off. Maybe if I wanted my voice to be heard, to spread my message and share what I know to be true and good in the world, all I need to do is tell a story. Let me tell you, I didn't go back to 5th grade for the rest of that year. I was on tour in my school. Kindra is the giant's big toe, which wasn't great for my popularity, but that really wasn't what it was after anymore. I remember walking down on one of the very last days of school, side by side, those wide elementary school hallways with my best friend, Molly, and the principal came walking towards us. And he did the thing that, hey, Molly, Molly, because he couldn't help himself. God bless that man. Anyway, but then he turned to me and he said, Kindra, I heard you've been telling some great stories. Keep it up. And so I did. Yes. And now I am here. Okay? Now I am here with all of you, and here is the reason why. I know that you know that at this moment in time, it is time for all of your voices, individually, collectively, to be heard. It is time to go all in on what you have and what you know to be true. And to do that, the best way to do that is through the stories you tell. And make no mistake, these are stories you already have. All you have to do is know how to use them, and that is what we're talking about here today. Are you excited or what? That's good news. That's good news. And you know what? The other good news is, even if you weren't excited, it doesn't matter. I have enough excitement for the possibility of your stories to go around, okay? So here's how the rest of our time together this morning is going to break down. First, in order for you to harness the power of your stories, it's really important that you understand why storytelling works so well. I know that you've heard a lot about stories, but what's really happening when we tell stories, when we hear stories? From there, we're going to move into, let's call it a clarification of what a story actually is, which I know sounds ridiculous because stories are the building block of human communication. But here's the thing, storytelling, tell your story, has become a buzzword. Okay, which is great. It means more people are aware of the power of story. It means a little bit of job security for me in my made-up job. My dad is finally proud of me. Like, these are all good things. However, anytime a word or a concept becomes a buzzword, we disconnect a little bit from what that actually means, which means each of you are missing key storytelling opportunities. And then finally, I want you to walk out of this room here today with some very specific, foolproof strategies so you can start telling your stories better than you already do. All right, so let's do this. First, why does storytelling work so well? Well, let's start here with stories having the innate ability to communicate the true value of something. How many of you have ever gotten stuck in a price conversation when you're talking to somebody about new skin, right? They're like, but the money, right? Or how many of you have ever had a conversation with someone and you're like, if they only understood the value of not just the products, but the opportunity, or not even just the opportunity, but this community, this family, that they will become a better version of themselves simply for saying yes. How many of you have ever felt that little glitch? Like, why don't they understand? It's because humans don't want to make our decisions based on logic. Now, that's how we'll make them if we have no other choice, but our preference is to make decisions based on the emotions that we feel. And how do you get someone to feel something, to feel the potential value that is there for them? You tell them stories. Now, anthropologists wanted to put this to the test to see, what do people buy? Do they buy the thing and the bullet points about it, the science behind it, the descriptions, or do they buy the story of the thing And just for fun, how much will they pay for it? So here's what they did. They gathered 200 objects. Now you can see on the screen there, they spent a total of $250. So it's not like they were breaking the bank or anything. But then they took each one of those items and put them up on eBay with a story to see what people would pay for them. Let's take a look. Here, this is a used pink horse toy. One of the items, okay, you can see they spent $1 on it. Now before I go any further, can we all just come to an agreement that things from the 80s, clearly this is an 80s horse, judging by its very poofy mane, those pink hooves and the silver leg. Well, how many of you had that outfit? I had that outfit. Can we all agree that things from the 80s are not vintage? Can we agree on that? Yes? Thank you. I feel seen. This is not a vintage horse. This is just an old used toy, okay? So they put it up on eBay for $1, but then they wrote a story. Now here's the story. The story was of a woman, a family, actually. Parents who had recently dropped their daughter off at college. Have any of you dropped a kid off at college? Yeah? I dropped my kids off at middle school. I thought I was gonna die, so I'm not looking forward to the whole college situation. But the mother came home, feeling sentimental, started going through some of her daughter's things, you know. She came across this pink horse, and suddenly she had a memory. And it was that every day, this horse, at the end of the day, was the first thing the mother saw, because her daughter would be kneeling at the windowsill, trotting the horse across the windowsill, waiting for her mother to come home from work. First thing the mom saw at the end of every day. And the mother hoped that whoever purchased this horse would use it as a reminder that though the days can sometimes feel long, the years are oh so short. Sweet story, right? Sentimental. How many of you are like, oh, I love it. Someone bought this horse for $104.50. Now, I hope you're kind of chuckling to yourself. I also hope you're feeling a little uncomfortable with that, because is the horse worth that? No, it is worth $1, okay? But what did the person buy? They didn't buy the horse, right? They bought the story of what that horse could mean in their lives. It was the story of being present, of nostalgia, of seeing the beauty of your life before it passes you by. And how many of you could use that reminder from time to time? Make no mistake, if you're getting stuck in price conversations or value conversations, it means that you're trying to meet them at logic, and what they really need, what they really need are the stories behind the ingredients, the stories of what the science can mean in their lives. Now, how many in here, let me just ask, do we have any goal-oriented people in the room? Any, just a few. Okay, so we have a couple. I feel like it wouldn't be very fair of me to show this to you without showing you the final results. Okay, so should we see how this worked as a strategy and what it meant for them? Remember, they spent $250. They made $8,000. Okay, that is a 3,100% increase on their efforts. Now, I want you to think about what this means for you and your new skin business and going all in. If you start layering stories, telling the stories of what this means in your life, what kind of difference could it make in the understanding of the value that you're here to offer? Okay, so that's the first reason. Let's talk about the second reason that stories are so important, and that is stories are how we connect with people. Since the beginning of time, this has been actually the topic of my third book, The Story Edge. This has been our evolutionary edge, is sharing stories human to human to explain high concepts and to connect with people on a different level. Now, to put this to the test, the ability for stories to connect, we're going to do a little audience participation. All right, so here's what I want you to do. Turn to your neighbor, say good morning. That is not the entirety of the exercise. Don't get your hopes up, okay? And for those of you who turn to multiple neighbors, you're gonna have to choose one, okay? The overachievers, whichever one you like the best. No, I'm just kidding. We can have a few groups of 3, that's fine. Now here's what I want you to do. Part 1 of this exercise, I want you to turn to that neighbor. And I want you to tell them, you don't have to tell them a story. We're not gonna get ahead of ourselves here yet, but I want you to tell them about the importance of perseverance. How many of you have had to persevere before in this business or beyond? Yes, of course, we've all had to persevere. So just take a moment, you each get a turn, talk about the importance of perseverance. Go. Good job. All right, switch if you haven't already. Switch, everyone gets a turn. Nice. Good work. All right, come on back to me. Come on back. How many of you learned something nice about perseverance? Yes? How many of you have had to talk to your team before about the importance of perseverance? They're afraid of facing rejection. Yet this is the message that leaders have to deliver on a regular basis, both inside this industry and without. All right, great. Now we're going to move into part 2 of this exercise. Are you ready? I want you to turn to that exact same neighbor, but this time, I want you to tell them about the first time or the worst time you fell off your bike. Now, for whatever reason, you've never been on a bicycle before, then maybe it's the first time or the worst time you tried to bake something, first day of school at a new school. All right, but the first time or worst time you fell off your bike, go. Good. All right, switch if you haven't already. Everyone gets a turn, yeah? Switch. All right, come on back to me. Come on back. You all lived happily ever after. They're just gonna keep going. Don't worry, if you can hear me right now and you're getting worried because you think I've lost complete control of the room, just know that this happens every time, right? Once you start telling stories, it's almost impossible to get them to stop. Watch, this is the oldest trick in the book for speakers, presenters like me, teachers use it, right? Give yourselves a round of applause, everyone. Okay, so listen, you can still hear it. Can you still hear it? There's always a few left. All right, great job. Let's talk about what just happened in the room here right now. Now, I get a different perspective than all of you get because I get to see it kind of as a whole. So let's talk about it first on a big macro level. How many of you, first of all, thank you so much for participating, and you did a great job talking about perseverance. We're all very serious about how important persevering is, but did you notice the volume in the room was like 2 times louder when you were telling the story of the bicycle? Did you hear that? Just the energy in the room was different. And not only that, but as I looked around the room, the whole room started to move. You were leaning in and out. You were going, and then there was a lot of, some of you, this is not how you ride I didn't realize you were all from such mountainous regions. There was a lot of ups and backs, and the way, actually that's a good point too, the way that you all laugh at each other's pain is very telling. I think that's a story for a different time. But it was a completely different experience in the room between those two messages. And the reason for that is when we are telling our stories, we are simply more ourselves. You heard earlier about being authentic, and so many times we think, especially, I mean, you're business owners, you're talking about very scientific, top-level products and an exquisite opportunity, and you feel the need to do it justice by being very serious. But when we tell our stories, we are more ourselves. People want to do business with you as yourself, and it gives them permission to be more themselves as well. And this is how we build these relationships, because ultimately this is a relationship business, isn't it? Don't you feel like you know the person you're sitting next to a little bit better now that you've heard their story, right, about falling off? Don't you like them a little bit more? Yes, some of you are like, no, that person is nuts. That is a maniac of a woman sitting next to me, okay? But you know someone more when they share their stories. This is how we build trust. This is how we build bridges quickly and deeply. And one last advantage of using your story. Wouldn't it take just a small adjustment of your bicycle story to make it a story about the importance of perseverance? Unless it was the last time you were ever on a bicycle, and then yes, you will have to find a different story to illustrate the importance of perseverance. But when you're out there having to discuss and put into context these high-level concepts, use your stories to do it. All right, and the last reason that storytelling is worth your investment, worth going all in on, so that you can go all in on everything that you're doing right here, is ultimately stories are the thing that sticks. Story is what we remember, and there's a reason for that. It's that the storytelling process, by default, is a co-creative one. So for example, as I am telling you my story, you are creating your own version of it in your mind. You're taking my words, yes, but you're adding to it your own images from your life experience, your emotion, your desires, your hopes. Let me ask you, how many of you, when I was telling you the story about 5th grade, imagined your 5th grade best friend? Could any of you see your 5th grade best friend? Yeah. Or how many of you pictured when I was talking about walking down the wide elementary school hallways? How many of you could see the hallways from your elementary schools? Yes? Okay, so you're raising your hands, nodding your heads because I know what I'm doing up here. I don't know how else to describe it. I know that by sharing this information with you in the form of a story, you will meet me halfway. And as a result, the message will mean more to you, and you will remember it longer. Rudyard Kipling said it, if history were taught in the form of a story, it would never be forgotten. How many of you are here enduring the ups and downs of entrepreneur life because you want to be forgotten? No, you wouldn't be here. This is how you leave your legacy. This is how you make a difference. Your voice is heard through all of the stories that you tell that they will remember. Okay, so all of these great things that a story can do, and yet there is a problem. We hear so much about telling your story, and this is my story, and here's my story, that we've lost the meaning of what a story really is. So what I'd like to do right now is actually talk to you first about a few of the things that a story is not. We'll talk about what a story is, and then I'm going to show you a case study so you can see the difference a story makes. So let's start here with what a story is not. These are many of the common offenders. It is not a bullet point list of ingredients or benefits. You heard one of the women up here say, facts tell, stories sell, right? You want to talk about the ingredients because they're fascinating, yes, but what is the story of when those ingredients have made a difference in your life, or what have they enabled you to do? How many of you have felt the co-creative process starting by reading the back of a label? No, it's not the label, it's the story of what can happen. Impressive science, the same thing. Yes, it's great to have the science, but what your people want to know is what that science will mean in their lives. It's not a long, drawn-out history lesson about your entire life. Now, I know some of you, you're like, oh, I do that, right? Where you're like, I'm going to tell my story, and then you talk about every terrible thing that has ever happened in your life, right? No, that's just that's just a history lesson. That's just a timeline, and finally, it's not high-level jargon or values or promises or principles. For example, how many of you are passionate about what you do? Yes? Let me hear it. Passionate? Yes, I love that. But there's nothing less passionate than saying, I am passionate about my business, right? Just saying the word passion isn't painting the picture, co-creation of what that passion means. For example, I was working with a woman in your industry, and her why, the reason that she engaged in this business was to have more time freedom to spend with her children. How many of you, is that part of your why? Right, to have some more time freedom. Okay, great. And so I said, all right, so tell me about that. What does that look like? What does it feel like? And she said, it feels like more time freedom. Right? Oh, which, great, but what is that? So with a little bit of effort, we found an amazing story. You see, she'd been working full-time, which, she was very good at the job that she did, and every year at her kids' school, they had this day called Author Day, right, where the kids would dress up either as their favorite character in a book or their favorite author. It was a big deal, costumes. There was a big Author Day parade, and every year this mother would dress her kids up. She would put all the work into it. She would drop her kids off at school, and then she would drive to work. And at noon, she would start getting pictures on her phone of her kids in the Author Day parade, taken by other mothers, because she couldn't be there, because she didn't have the time freedom to leave work. And she decided one year that this was the last year, that she was going to double down on the work in this business. She did that, she put in the effort, and the next year, when Author Day came around, she dressed her kids up, she dropped them off at school, and yes, at noon, her phone was filled with photos of the Author Day parade that she herself had taken, because this business had allowed her to leave her job and have all the time freedom to be the mother she wanted to be for her children. Right? Now, doesn't that feel, it makes my leg hairs grow, just how, don't zoom in on my leg hairs, please, okay? But doesn't that feel different? Doesn't that make time freedom mean more? You have these stories, but you need to be telling them. So let's talk briefly about what a story actually is. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to a story. You've heard this. It doesn't help you much. We have a different way to think about it in just a bit. A story happens in a particular moment, a moment when you have the realization, a moment when you have someone come to you and say, you've changed my life, and you can see it right there before your very eyes. There are emotions in a story, not just the information. And finally, there are characters to care about and something at stake. Now, I know showing you two side-by-side slides of what a story is and what it isn't going to help you very much. So what I like to do now is play for you a short video. Now, you can look on the screen here. This is a video about a brand called Soul Carrier. Yes, it's a purse company. It has absolutely nothing to do with what you do. However, this is a woman, an entrepreneur, selling a product, a part of a brand, and she wanted to tell her story through this video. It went on our website, it was going to be on our social media. I hope you could tell by the large air quotes, okay, that she does not tell a story in this video. That's the spoiler alert. There is no story. But what I want you to do is watch this video, and afterwards, I'm going to ask you what you think. All right? Let's roll the tape.
Talk to me. Talk to me. Close your eyes.
Okay.
Breathe.
All right, ready? Yeah.
So what does the Journey Collection mean to you? It means I'm being who I was born to be. I'm creating and I'm designing and I'm living my dreams, and this is the ripple effect of just finally getting to the place of doing what I so passionately love and want to be. A lot of people view me as the girl who lost my parents in college, and I was a girl that was supposed to carry on Paisan and Joyce's legacy, but deep down, I want to be me. I want to be Jennifer Page. I want people to look at me and be like, she listened to her own intuition, she listened to her heart, and she followed her dreams. Soul Here is a fashion brand and it designs handbags, but it's so much more than that. I want it to be about encouraging young people to be who they are, to follow their dreams, and to not get swept up in the white noise, but to know that if there's something what they want to do, to go after it and do it with all their heart and all their passion. If you're doing what you're meant to do, you will get there.
All right. Yeah, that was nice, right? Okay. And so let me ask you, actually, let me ask you in this way. I told you I was going to ask you what you thought of the video. How many of you thought that video was actually pretty good? But it's the before video. You saw it on there, so you know it's the bad one, okay? Yes, so now raise your hand. How many of you thought that video was actually pretty good? Okay, good, it's okay. I feel like we should just get this out in the opening. You can do pretty good things and not tell a story. Right? She was talking about following her dreams, pursuing her passion. These are things that all of you talk about, right? Pursuing your passion, following your dreams, and yet she did not tell a story. The question is, how differently would you feel about the product, about the person? Because make no mistake, they are buying you, they are saying yes to you if she had told a story. And here's the biggest mistake that happens when it comes to telling our stories in your business. Here it is. We allude to the story, but we don't actually tell it. We mention there's a story there, but we don't tell the story. We talk around it, and so then we don't reap any of the benefits I spent the whole first half of this presentation discussing. Let me ask you, how many of you heard what the story might have been? Did you hear her say it? That she lost her parents in college? How many of you heard her say that? Yeah, and even when she said it, didn't your brain go like this? I'm about to hear a story. Because your brain wants to hear a story because you're all humans and that's how humans are programmed. But then she kept going, so you kept going, and no one was the wiser for it. And what we got was a pretty good video. How differently would you feel about the brand, about the product, about the person if she had told that story? Good news, you don't have to wonder. We have an after video. So I got together with Jen, and it turns out that moment with her parents really was a catalyst for her. Her life was going in one direction, suddenly it went a different direction. We reworked the script so that she told the story. I want you to watch this video and see if you can tell the difference. Let's roll the tape.
I suppose my story starts like anyone else's. My parents wanted what was best for me and not to have to experience the struggles that they did. I pursued a business degree, and then afterwards I planned to pursue law school. Then when I was 21, my life changed. I woke to find myself hanging upside down by my seatbelt. My family's SUV had flipped over several times, hitting the base of a concrete billboard before coming to a stop. Both my parents were taken from me that day. My mom was killed instantly, and my dad died hours later in the hospital. I knew that saying goodbye to two people I loved would be hard, but what I wasn't expecting was how hard the aftermath would be. Everyone was wondering what I would become in light of this tragedy. There was a lot of pressure, scrutiny, a lot of noise. I'll never forget the last words my mother said to me. She was sitting in the passenger seat of the car, and seconds before the accident happened, she turned around and she said to me, "Where do you want to go?" The next moment was chaos, and she never even got to finish that sentence. But her voice, that question, "Where do you want to go?" is forever frozen in my memory. I decided that the best way to honor my parents is to find the answer that worked for me, for Jennifer Page, not for anyone else. Soul Carrier is the manifestation of that. Every handbag I design is created to serve as a daily reminder, to ignite people to do what they're meant to do. I don't know where you'll be when someone asks you that question, "Where do you want to go?" Or if you will have to ask it of yourself. But when that day comes, I hope that Soul Carrier can be a reminder to tune out the noise and to choose the path you were meant for.
So let me ask you, could you tell the difference? I know, isn't it shocking? Isn't it shocking to think she didn't tell that story right from the start? Doesn't the name Soul Carrier mean something different to you? For a while, Jen was getting more speaking engagements than I was, which was irritating, to be honest. But people wanted to hear that story. Now, before I continue, there are two people that I need to talk to in this room right now. All right? The first person is the person who is watching that video and thinking to themselves, I have a story like that. I have a story that big, that hard, that tragic. And maybe you're thinking, and this is why I tell that story, because yes, your big, hard, heartbreaking story can be the story that someone else needs to hear so they can keep going in their own story. Or maybe you're thinking, I have a story that big and I'm not quite sure if I'm ready to tell it. And I say to you, that's okay too. Give it time, give it space, and when you're ready, tell that story. That being said, the second person I need to talk to in this room is the person who watched that video and thought to themselves, I do not have a story that big. Like, who am I to tell my story? Who would want to listen? And to you, I have a story that matters. It's the decision to share even the small stories of our life, to give pieces of ourselves, our lessons, our perspectives, to allow people to connect with us. So even if your life is a compilation of small stories, be sure that you tell them. And with that in mind, I now want to share with you some very specific foolproof storytelling strategies to help you get better at telling your stories. Now, do we have any type A people in this room? A few of you? Okay, good. Me too. These next slides are going to go by very quickly. Here's how you can get them. Take a picture of this slide right here. You're going to send a text message to that phone number, 33777. In the message, you'll write the word storytelling, all one word. You'll hit send. I'm going to ask you for your name, your email address, and after you send that, I will send you these next slides and